Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is a remake of one of my previous videos, Why Sustains Don't Sell. It was released before Lingsha. Things have changed a lot since Lingsha's release. Sustains can sell, due to violating practically every rule that a sustain has established so far. Yes, permanent array and high scenes pull value is significantly higher, and it's not just them that got better. This video will be a look back on why sustains didn't sell, but now they very much can. But they still have their limits. Anyway, let's get on to the video. First, to establish why sustains sold really badly back then, let's establish what made them good to pull initially. 1. Less resets. While many things are achievable in sustainless teams that are very impressive, for anyone not looking to do a sweaty endgame run for the moment and just want to chill and see the fight, bringing a sustain is a mandatory choice. The second reason is the highest DPS loss is death. That's pretty self-explanatory. Getting killed on a 0 cycle run is just as bad as taking 10 cycles as far as MOC is concerned. And lastly, people die when they are killed. I made this meme reference on the old video a year ago, and it's nice to see Saber and Archer in HSR finally fulfilling that prophecy. That's pretty much it. Now let's understand why sustains had a really weird value and why they generally just had a very low value. While external factors like banner placement and story highlights are important to what makes people want to pull sustains, it doesn't affect their overall pull value. So let's think of this, right? Why exactly was the pull value of sustains before 3.x so low? Number 1. Variety was not needed. The catch-all rule for whether you should pull a sustain or not is if you already had 2 limited sustains, you will never find a use for a third. This is because endgame is only 2 teams. 2 sustains on one side is complete overkill. Well, with Anom arbitration, that's no longer a general rule because a third team is now a thing. But even so, even if you did have 3 limited sustains, the problem became that sustains back then used to be, hey, I can sustain your team and I have a small bonus. The small bonus was not big enough for you to pull another sustain, when most of their value is basically to just keep you alive. Well, a couple of things have changed. First of all, there's been enemy mechanics that heavily incentivize types of sustain. Polyxia is probably the worst one, and enemy mechanics like Nikodor favor shields more. Anom favors many ticks of healing or shielding to comfortably survive through. Even outside of Anom, with increased pressure from attack inflation on all endgame modes, this is a much more possible reality that you can walk into. There are more enemies now that simply using a sustain may not be enough. They might need a healer or a shielder specifically to even clear, and heavily punishing the opposite. Second, due to more strict mechanics from other characters like Evernight and Sunday, teams may not be able to accommodate for a sustain that doesn't fit their design. For Evernight, there is only one unit in the game that can both heal the party constantly and provide a Momo Sprite for her passive. Everyone else looks terrible in comparison. For Sunday, his passive only activates a small group of characters and only PT can activate it for everyone. These are the 2 strongest sustains in 2 of the strongest team archetypes. Previously, sustains were defined as the rock of your team, with only small bonuses that made them interchangeable, since most of their value was keeping you alive. But now we are in an era where sustains do huge bonuses for your team that other sustains are simply a huge downgrade for. And that's why we might be on the course of pulling even more limited sustains due to the rising pull value in partnership. Characters like Gallagher, Lingsha, and Huohuo, who had their specific niches, have specific DPS that cater to them, and also got a higher pull value due to these meta shifts. But okay, let's say we did have E0 of sustains with different variety. Their pull value is going to be dead after that because of one thing that used to be true. Sustain investment is not very good. Unfortunately, this is where Gallagher, Huohuo, and Lingsha started falling off. Compared to pure supports, sustain support investment is a waste. Compared to DPS, sustain DPS investment is a waste. Sustain idos are oftentimes just worse than even a signature LC from anyone else in the team. God forbid it's a support. In terms of pull value, it's just not worth it. Well, Hyacine flipped that entire argument. Hyacine's signature LC is insanely strong for its niche, and its utility is literally irreplaceable in a light cone slot, a perfect storm to make her pull value amazing. Making a sustained signature LC that has just as much value as a Harmony signature LC is a damn good way to break this trend entirely. And if you look at her idols, it looks even more ridiculous. It's not beating Triby's E1, but the fact that it can be your next stopping point after Triby E1 is kinda crazy. Permansor Touré is a bit on the weaker side of the spectrum, but he still nonetheless had the same effect. Due to Anom hitting so hard, his LC might actually be a requirement to prevent certain teams from refreshing too many times. The party damage bonus is also great, and it lacks competition. Again, still weaker than Hyacine, but he is free, and his support idols aren't shabby either. So nowadays, investing in your sustain might not only be viable, but it can be optimal at a certain point. Alright, so variety of sustain matters now. Due to attack inflation, new sustains will have much higher value, and you can't coast off one sustain for too long without feeling pain. And even after you get sustains, their idols and LCs are actually worth getting and can be optimal over other character investment. So far, Hyacine and PT have broken pretty much all of the previous conventions. They provide enough bonuses where variety matters, their investment is way more efficient, but there's still one hurdle that prevents them from reaching the top of the sales charts and why some people just do not like sustains. Lastly, sustains are not high value with more cost. All we have left now to fight with this contention is Hyacine and PT. But every sustain eventually ran into this roadblock, and these two are no exception. For example, if you have DOT full E6S5, the enemy will probably just die before a sustain is even needed to do anything. Because of sustains being balanced to be worse than a pure support or a pure DPS, slotting them with a support or DPS at similar cost is just better. The best way to prevent an enemy killing you after all is killing them first, and if you have that many Eidolons, that's bound to happen at some point. In Castress teams, if you have the team at like full E6S5, she might as well spam Dragon Enhanced Basics and use it as a tank and still clear. And for the sake of efficiency in this case, Hyacine's slot at that point is relegated to Triby. PT is worse. In many of his teams, running a third support is clearly better than him in raw numbers, but not in safety. Just look at Finon. But again, who cares about safety when killing the enemy quickly makes it a non-issue? And even worse for PT is that at least Hyacine is a battery for HP charge, where losing HP is mandatory, or for Cyrene teams because their charging is out of this world. Unless we're talking about Yanqing or Arlen, Donheng Permansor Touré shielding just isn't required at all, nor is it a big boost. So, what has changed to the pull value of sustains thanks to 3.x? Elements of a sustains kit are much more important in their nuance. The variety of sustains makes them higher pull value instead of tiny bonuses that make them interchangeable, like Sunday with Permansor Touré, Evernight with Hyacine, Jade with Lingsha, Aglaya and Huohuo for a time before PT showed up, so on and so forth, etc., right? Investment into sustain is actually kinda good now. Only PT and Hyacine can really have this claim so far, more so Hyacine. Previous sustain idols and LCs just aren't as important, but Hyacine LC completely changed that, and her idols are actually not a bad choice after a Triby E1. Because of the increasingly dangerous enemy stats, PT Sig offering him immortality is good value, since you might not have a choice in an Anom arbitration. However, once reaching whale cost, their value still isn't as good. Hyacine is the strongest challenger of this claim with her E6, and she fell face first towards Castress using her dragon as a tank. While 3.x has given sustains very strong fundamental changes for their pull value at low investment, at very high investment, newly released sustains got better but still followed the rule. Overall, the entire meta of 3.x broke conventions on how valuable sustains really are. For most of the player base that don't spend, it's quite visible to how it affects team building and how newer sustains low investment can compete with other roles investment. But as always, when reaching higher cost, the returns just get a lot worse for sustains. Anyway, I hope you guys like this remake of my older video. You guys should check out my older video because it's a fun watch. Anyway, I hope you guys like this. I'll see you guys later. Join my membership. I do want to throw out an update due to the leaker hunt decree, I guess. Well, not even leaker hunt decree. Apparently, Hoyo is hunting down leak content creators, so expect my content when I'm covering leaks to be like really weird. So it's probably gonna be very entertaining once you see it in practice. But I have a couple of ideas. So yeah, I hope you guys. I hope to see you guys later in a secret stream. You guys know what I'm talking about. And yeah, bye.